What if the one person who could take your kids away was the same person you helped on the side of the road the night before? That's exactly what happened to Marcus, a single dad from Columbus, Ohio. And I promise you, by the time this story ends, you're going to feel something you didn't expect to feel today. Marcus Webb was 34 years old, working 2 jobs, raising 2 kids completely on his own, and fighting a custody battle that could have ripped his entire world apart. His ex-wife's lawyers were good, like really good. And Marcus? He had a public defender who kept forgetting his last name. The odds were not in his favor, not even close. But one stormy Tuesday night in November changed everything. And it had nothing to do with lawyers, evidence, or courtroom strategy. It had everything to do with one decision Marcus made on an empty highway, a decision most people would not have made. This is that story. Let's go back to November 14th. Columbus had been getting hammered by storms all week. One of those weeks where the rain doesn't stop. The sky stays dark, and the roads feel like rivers. Marcus had just finished his second shift at the warehouse. It was almost 11 p.m., and he was exhausted. Bone-tired. The kind of tired where your eyes burn and your hands feel heavy on the steering wheel. He had to be up at 6 a.m. to get his kids, Lily and Jake, ready for school. Lily was 7. Jake was 5. And they were staying with his sister that night because Marcus had to work late. That was his life. Every single day. Work, kids, court dates, repeat. He was driving home on Route 40 when his headlights caught something on the side of the road. A car. Hazard lights blinking. And a woman standing outside in the pouring rain. On her phone, clearly not getting a signal. Marcus slowed down. Now here's where most people, and I'm not judging, I'm just being honest, would have kept driving. It's almost midnight. It's pouring. You're tired. You don't know this person. You've got problems of your own. But Marcus pulled over. He later said, and I want you to remember these words, he said. I thought about my sister. What if nobody stopped for her? He rolled down his window and called out, Hey, you okay? You need help. The woman looked up. She was probably in her mid-50s, dressed in a blazer that was now soaked through. Hair stuck to her face, and she looked completely stranded. Her name was Patricia Holloway. And she had a flat tire, no signal, and her AAA app wasn't loading. Marcus got out of his truck. In the rain. At 11 p.m., after a double shift, he popped his trunk, grabbed his tire iron and spare, and got to work. Patricia kept saying, You really don't have to do this. I can wait for someone. And Marcus just said, Ma'am, you're not waiting out here alone. It's fine. 20 minutes. That's how long it took. Marcus changed that tire in the rain, on the side of a dark highway, while Patricia held his flashlight and told him she was in town for a work conference. He didn't ask what she did. She didn't tell him. When he was done, he made sure the spare was secure, walked her back to her car, and said, Drive safe. Get home to whoever's waiting for you. Patricia looked at him for a moment, just a second longer than people usually look at strangers, and said, Thank you. You have no idea what kind of night I've had. Marcus just nodded, got back in his truck, and drove home. He didn't think about it again. He had bigger things to worry about. Because 3 days later, Marcus was sitting in a courtroom, and his hands were shaking. The custody hearing had been going on for weeks. His ex-wife, Dana, wasn't a bad person. They just couldn't make the marriage work. But somewhere along the way, her lawyer had painted a picture of Marcus that didn't feel like him. They brought up the fact that he worked nights, that he relied on his sister for childcare, that he'd missed one school pickup last spring because his car broke down. One time, one pickup, and Marcus sat there listening to all of it and thought, this is really how they're going to tell my story? His public defender was doing his best, but Marcus could feel the room. He could feel how it was going, and he was terrified, not for himself, for Lily, for Jake. The thought of not tucking them in at night, not making their lunches, not being the one they ran to when they had a nightmare. That thought was eating him alive. The judge was set to hear final statements that morning and then make a decision. Marcus didn't even know the judge's name when he walked in. He sat down, looked up at the bench, and froze. Sitting there in black robes, reading through a thick file of papers, was Patricia Holloway, the woman from the highway. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He didn't know if this was good or bad. He didn't know what to do. He just sat there, staring, and then quickly looked away. Patricia, Judge Holloway, had not looked up yet. His lawyer leaned over and whispered something about final statements. Marcus nodded but wasn't really hearing it. His brain was spinning. Does she recognize me? Does it even matter? Is this going to make things worse? Should I say something? Should I say nothing? He decided to say nothing. What was he supposed to do? Stand up and say, "Hey, judge, remember me." Highway 40. The hearing resumed. Dana's lawyer went first. Strong closing. Polished. The kind of closing that makes you feel like the other side has already won. He talked about stability, consistency, structure, all the things that sounded like Marcus couldn't provide them. And look, Marcus understood why it sounded that way on paper. 2 jobs, late nights, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, being dropped at their aunt's house at 7 a.m. On paper, it looked rough. But paper doesn't show you the whole person. Paper doesn't show you the dad who learned to braid his daughter's hair by watching YouTube tutorials for 3 hours because Lily wanted braids for picture day. Paper doesn't show you the dad who read the same dinosaur book to Jake every single night for 8 months because Jake loved it and Marcus never once complained. Paper doesn't show you the man who pulled over on a dark highway in the pouring rain at 11 p.m. because he thought about his sister and decided a stranger shouldn't be alone. Marcus's lawyer gave his closing. It was decent. Not great. Decent. And then Judge Holloway spoke. She said she wanted to ask Marcus a few questions directly before she made her decision. That was unusual. His lawyer nodded, and Marcus stood up. She looked at him. And this time, he knew she recognized him. He could see it in her eyes. Not a big reaction. Not a dramatic moment. Just a quiet recognition. Like a flicker. She asked him about his work schedule. He answered honestly. She asked him about childcare arrangements. He explained his sister's help, how it worked, why it worked. She asked him what a normal morning looked like in his house. And Marcus, tired, scared Marcus who hadn't slept well in weeks, just told the truth. He said, "I wake up before them. I make breakfast. Lily likes her eggs scrambled, no salt. Jake wants his with ketchup, which I think is disgusting, but I make it anyway. I pack their bags the night before because mornings get crazy. I drive them to school. I go to my first job. I pick them up. I help with homework. I cook dinner. I do baths. I read to them. I put them to bed. And then I go to my second job. And I do it again the next day. Is it perfect? No. Do I miss things sometimes because I'm stretched thin? Yes. But I am there. I am always, somehow there." The courtroom was quiet. Judge Holloway looked at him for a long moment. Then she wrote something down and said, "Thank you, Mr. Webb. I've heard enough." Everyone assumed that meant she'd made up her mind quickly, and that was bad news. Quick decisions in courtrooms usually favor the side with the better lawyer. Marcus sat back down. His leg was bouncing under the table. His sister was in the back of the room with her hand pressed to her mouth. He didn't look back at her. Judge Holloway began reading her decision. She talked about the evidence. She talked about both parents. And then she said something that nobody in that room expected. She said that in her years on the bench, she had learned that character is not something you can fully capture in documents and depositions. She said character shows up in the small moments. In the moments when nobody is watching. In the moments when a person is tired and has every reason to look the other way. And they don't. She awarded primary custody to Marcus. Not because of anything his lawyer said. Not because of any piece of paper. But because a judge is a human being first, and she had seen, with her own eyes, on a dark, rainy highway at 11 p.m., exactly who Marcus Webb was when he thought no one important was watching. Marcus didn't move for a second. Then his sister made a sound from the back of the room, somewhere between a sob and a laugh. And that snapped him back to reality. His lawyer was shaking his hand. People were moving around him. But Marcus just sat there for one quiet second, and he thought about pulling over. That one small decision. That one moment where he could have kept driving and didn't. He didn't pull over to impress anyone. He didn't do it to get anything in return. He did it because it was the right thing to do and because that's who he is. And the universe, or fate, or luck, or whatever you want to call it, made sure that the one person who needed to see that actually saw it. After the hearing, in the hallway, Judge Holloway walked past Marcus. She wasn't supposed to say much, and she didn't. But she paused for just a second and said quietly, "Those kids are lucky." And she walked on. Marcus stood in that hallway with his sister crying into his shoulder. And he thought about Lily's braids and Jake's ketchup eggs and the dinosaur book and every exhausting, beautiful, impossible day of the last 3 years. He had fought so hard, so quietly, without anyone watching, except someone was. I want you to sit with that for a second. Because this story isn't just about Marcus. It's about all the people who are doing the right thing every single day when no one is looking. The parents who are running on empty but still show up. The people who pull over in the rain. The ones who choose kindness even when they're tired. Even when it costs them something. Even when there's zero reward waiting for them on the other side. Most of the time, those moments go unnoticed. But sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the world sees you. And sometimes the person who sees you is exactly the person who needed to. Marcus Webb didn't win that custody case because he had the best lawyer or the strongest argument. He won it because for 34 years, he had been quietly, consistently, without any audience, being a good man. That's not a small thing. That's everything. So the next time you're tired and you see someone who needs help and you think about just driving past, remember Marcus. Remember that you never know who's watching. And more importantly, remember that even if nobody ever sees it, it still matters. You still matter. Do it anyway.